Yeah, see that B. There's a B on the car, so it's the BeeTCC. In order to drive the point home that this is not the BeeTCC, but it is a BeeTCC, just press the horn. Hey everybody, welcome to Alton Park. And you may remember seeing Jimmy, Bailey, me occasionally, and some other people at Throttle driving the Super Touring mod in AMS1 with mild punting and much hilarity. Sadly, that mod cannot be released. We don't have permission, and I don't want to have like 70 million copyright and trademark infringements in my yearly Christmas time. It's a bit early, but hey, mod. I release something every year, I try to, and a lot of the time it's been a bit silly, like the Lego cars a couple of years ago. Sometimes it's a bit of an experiment, like a super detailed go-kart mod, and we had the Gravel Physics Group B-ish mod. Last year, the not perfect car, the 50s Formula 1 car. And this year, I'm happy to tell you, you can now try these Super Touring type physics. Sadly just not applied to the Super Touring mod that we use to punt each other in the Throttle races. So if you are playing AMS1, interested enough in the Super Touring physics to even give them a go if they're not the proper original cars, so I am talking to all 2.5 of you. You can now give it a go. It's available at Overtake, and read the instructions to tweak the force feedback and stuff. I've never had this much fun in a front-wheel drive car, so that's been really fun. Being dragged into this race a couple weeks ago, what always happens when I do a bit of off-driving in a car that I haven't been doing that much for a year or two, I get like sucked in again, and I think, well, I can do better. So many hours of spreadsheet wizardy later, we've got something here that I quite enjoy, and some people tested it for me and I also quite enjoy it. So maybe this is a fun front-wheel drive, Super Touring-ish experience for you to have a go at if you still have AMS1 and you like the idea of giving it a go. What makes this then so much better than before? Well, first of all, it's of course me being delusional, thinking I'm the best physics person in the world, so whatever I touch instantly is just genius. No, the last physics I did a couple years ago, I just finished some new spreadsheet tools and I was experimenting a bit. Let's say it was my hippie phase. But since then, I'm even older, and not really mature though, but even older. And I think I can use the tire physics spreadsheets a bit better than I could at that time. And looking at the tires I made back then, a bit weird. So these tires reflect how I think tires might be, which is all still mainly assumptions. So I think the tires are a bit better. I've made the car a bit more compliant because some of the cars in the Super Tourers, there's quite a difference between all of them. Were reasonably subtle. The Renaults, for example, had a bit of suspension travel, slight, a bit of softness in them, and that makes it feel nicer and more compliant and more willing. So that's a nice improvement. And I went going. What I really need to do is go on an English course, but hey, that's not gonna happen. So I went to town on the suspension and I did a couple neat tricks to it. On the front, we now have a negative scrub radius, and that's a little bit complicated, but it means that it's not like super mega ninja change, but it does help. When you go on the throttle, the steering doesn't go as light as it did before, because the negative scrub radius means that the driving force, the traction of that tire, keeps some load on the steering. So the steering is not going super light when you go on the throttle, which means that if the steering does go light, you're just slipping too much. So before, the steering went light and you couldn't really tell if it was because of a loss of grip or simply because the traction meant the steering went light. Like proper traction would still make the steering go light. With this mod now, with this suspension geometry, it's a bit better. So your steering has some weight to it, even if you go on the throttle. Unless you smoke the tires in first gear or second gear, then the steering will go light. So force feedback is much more communicative, which I find really helps. Oh, brakes can be locked. The default settings, you can still lower the brake pressure. I do not recommend that, but you can. I like the brakes, you know, where you need 80%-ish for optimum braking, but that means pressing 100 will lock the brakes quite soon, and that is just a fun challenge, and I really like my sim this way, but you can adjust if you want to. However, I did tweak the ABS here to be like a soft ABS, allowing too much slip, so you are losing time, but not fully locking up. So you can also experiment with the ABS if you're locking up too easily, because I think it is more realistic to use one of those soft ABS settings rather than lowering the brake pressure in the car setup. So, well, I could address all the 4 players individually, but you'll just have to play around with that. So communicative force feedback from the front suspension, but that's the front. Most cars have 2 sides to them, and the rear suspension is where the fun happens. Now I do know for a semi-fact that this is a sort of thing that they did at Volvo. I believe I have some information somewhere, I couldn't dig it up, I couldn't find it. That on the rear suspension they have a few different picker points for the steering link, the toe link, for different levels of bump toe out. And that's what I feel is the magic of the feeling of this car, because you can see how little lock I need. We only have 16 degrees of steering on the front tires, not a lot of lock available, but it sort of steers itself almost into the turns, because the rear tires, they have quite a bit of bump toe out, and that makes the car eager to turn. Now the difference between the previous versions and this is that I realized a lot of these cars have like a trailing arm rear suspension, and they have a funny property where they have a lot of anti-lift. That means when you brake, instead of the rear going up, the rear goes down. So what it means is you get bump travel in corners on the outside tire, on throttle of course with weight transfer, but also on braking. So basically everything that you do, that outside tire will toe out a little bit, and that will sort of do that forklift steering, assisting of the steering into the turns, meaning you need less lock, and you can sort of nudge it into the turns, and it will sort of be compliant at the rear and follow, which is really fun, but not in a way that you suddenly find yourself doing a reverse entry. So the front suspension giving you better force feedback, the rear suspension assisting your turning and your entry, so the brakes, and the slightly more compliant ride with the dampers are more compliant, the springs are a bit softer, make this a more engaging, controllable, adjustable car that I quite like, and I'm quite happy to finally be able to release it, because I find that experience of not needing that steering lock and not experiencing that big understeer and then just the patience on the throttle that I often have with my front-wheel drive cars. But of course there's still front-wheel drive, you cannot go on all the throttle immediately, but of course the throttle model, being AMS1, is absolutely it's a throttle model that I feel is probably alright. We don't have the data of these engines and how they responded to the throttle. But one of the things you have to do, of course, in a car like this is pick up, like mid-corner, find the throttle where the car starts to pick up, and then maybe wait a little bit, because if you go on the throttle too early you might understeer. So a good throttle model allows you to find that sort of neutral speed throttle, and I feel it is fairly intuitive to find the throttle and apply it then from that point. And even though these cars they rev to 8500 and the power is up there, they still have quite a bit of torque at 5.5, 6-ish as well. Oh, close there. So yeah, it's a nice change compared to the previous version that we drove with the Throttle guys, which you could unsettle that, but then you would do a reverse entry, a big slide, and this is more pliable. It wants to work with you, and you can see with between 45 and 90 degrees steering, it really moves nicely. So if you're curious what that feels like, download it, give it a go, and I hope you enjoy that. I've also been very inclusive because there are profiles included, and one of which is doesn't stop you braking too late, sadly, is for Gamepad drivers, because well, not everybody has a wheel or wants to drive with a wheel. So I spend a bit of time, it's not new, I've been doing this for my mods for a while now, tweaking the settings so it's easier and more consistent to drive with a pad as well. Well, I'm running out of petrol. So play with that. It's information in the PDF that is included with the mod. There are some things you can apply in the showroom that sort of slow the car down in rotation a little bit. So it's not like more grip, it's just rotation management, and that makes it much easier to drive with a pad. And of course it is a bit less realistic because the car doesn't rotate that slowly, but then a pad isn't a realistic input device anyway, and I find I can be a lot more consistent within about 1 second of my steering wheel lap times. So together with that soft ABS that I spoke about, which is even, you know, doable on the trigger, I feel that it's a really fun gamepad experience as well. So if anything, yeah, try that. It's not like the arcade physics I released a while ago, because everything is almost, well, everything is the same. You don't get that bump steer on the rear though. It's a bit more stable when you select the pad options. But the tires are the same and the main physics are the same. So you can drive against sim drivers with their wheels and you don't have a grip advantage or anything. It's just a lot more playable, a lot more controllable. I will get the Apex one day. AI sorta works. Thanks to the forum user Exafume. Did a few tweaks. I also did some tweaks to it. I would say the AI is pretty bad, but then on some of the newest releases the AI is even worse. And of course, being the BeeTCC mod, we have a very educational bee-themed driver list for somebody, you know, to learn all about the bees. Actually, the names of the drivers, I first wanted to do like bee-themed names, but you get bonus points if you guess how I got the driver names, where I got them from. Answer, I got them from the original Micro Machines DOS game, and I just copied the names from there. Anyway, so AI kinda works. Not amazing. I'm running out of fuel, so I guess what's left for me to say is, again, sorry we cannot release the actual BeeTCC mod, but we can release the TCC modified standard, you've heard it here, standard sounds from AMS1 as well. Just added some distortion and changed the mix a little bit. I do quite like it. It's got a bit of distortion, a bit of, you know, go fast feelings, a little bit of dynamic range, not a huge amount, so maybe the sounds are, I did put some work in them, maybe you like them as well. And no, that's the Apex will just not do today. Interested in super touring physics, give it a go, let me know what you think. Enjoy the holidays if I don't speak to you again. Give this a go and talk to you later. Bye bye.